Hi, what I want to do today is to demonstrate or teach you how I taught myself to do the Wallis Cast. I bought this really nice rod and reel from Colville Custom or Colville Precision Reels. It's a Colville Trinity 545, which is 5.5 inch reel. Just a really nice classic reel, custom handles, custom center plate. 13-foot rod, 4-section. And when I bought this system, I made the commitment to myself that I was going to teach myself the Wallis Cast. Before I learned how to side cast, before I learned how to do anything, I was going to learn how to cast properly using the Wallis Cast. I'm fishing typically in smaller streams in western New York, the Erie and Ontario tributaries, and the Wallis Cast is, from my understanding, one of the best casts to use in that situation. So I really wanted to learn the Wallis Cast. Now, I'd seen Danny Colville fishing the same seam as me, or same drift as me, in the Lake Erie tributary, and he was just amazing how well he could Wallis cast, even with his back up against a shale wall. Just cast after cast. And of course that day he also completely outfished me, which is probably one of the main reasons why I decided to move from spin fishing to center pinning. I also saw him give demonstrations on doing the Wallis Cast at the Niagara Fishing Outdoor Expo. So I thought, okay, I can do this. Went and started practicing and really had very limited success. I was really struggling with the Wallis Cast. I was getting maybe one good cast out of 10. Tried it on a stream, had about the same success or lack of success, and really made for a pretty lousy fishing day when you can't get any drifts in. You're constantly fixing line snags and stuff. And Danny, even after that particular day of fishing, I stopped at his store and he gave me a personal demonstration out back. That didn't help that much. I still was pretty lousy with the Wallis Cast, so I went back and started studying everything I could find, looking at YouTube videos, looking at step-by-step instructions on the web, all kinds of different things to try to teach myself what I was doing wrong with the Wallis Cast. And what I found out is that there was just a tremendous amount of variation on how people are doing the Wallis Cast. There does not seem to be any, universal way of doing it. And a lot of people are achieving success with the Wallis Cast doing it all kinds of different ways. And there's also two major branches of Wallis Cast. There seems to be the European method where they're holding the weight, loading the rod by pulling back on the weight, and then there's the modified Wallis Cast where you're doing a pull to accelerate the reel and casting. I'm going to focus on the modified Wallis Cast. The other one, I think I would bury a hook into my hand trying to hold the hook, or trying to hold the weight above the hook. So what I did is I started looking at all the different videos and looking at individual components. How are they casting? How are they holding the reel? What fingers are they using to release and stop? And how are they doing all the different steps on the Wallis Cast? And you'll find even on the grips there's a tremendous amount of variation from people using their thumb to do it. There's one guy that you'll see do a video, he seems to be pinching the reel. A lot of people are using their baby finger this way to control the reel. There's even a group of people that are using their baby finger this way to control the reel. Danny teaches using the ring finger to control the reel stop starting. So I was looking at all of them, and one of the problems I had is I didn't touch type, I didn't play the guitar, I didn't play the piano, so I didn't have individual control over especially this ring finger. So using the ring finger seemed like probably the least likely method that would work for me. So I was trying all the other ones and trying to see what worked. Now, what I was studying on this is what's going on. I mean, one thing, you need to be able to cast properly. You need to be able to also hold the reel at an angle And the reason you need to be able to hold the reel at an angle is you need to do the pull. And if the reel's down here, you either have to pull here, or if you pull here, you're pulling the line off the side of the reel, which is really a side cast. And you're not going to get the reel spinning. So you need to be able to have the reel at an angle to be able to get it accelerating or get it spinning while you're casting. So really the only two grips that seem to accomplish that is if you were using the baby finger and you're here like this, you're using the bottom of or the fatty portion of your palm to hold the reel so that it's at a nice angle, or the baby finger holds it and keeps it that way. The ones where you're holding up here, you're putting a lot of strain on your forearm to make that twist. And it's more likely that you're going to drop it and not hold that angle as you cast. The other thing Danny teaches is he uses a pointer finger. And the reason he does that is it locks the arm into a sort of a straight angle. The Wallis cast is not a wrist cast like bait casting or spin casting where you're using your wrist a lot. A Wallis cast, you're using your whole arm. You're using a 13, 12-foot rod. You really shouldn't be using your wrist. So that helps. It's not absolutely necessary, but it helps, lock that all in. The other thing I found is that the most natural way to hold this at a 45-degree angle or close to a 45-degree angle is to use that baby finger on the reel. It takes the weight of the reel so you can twist it. Your finger pointing. And then these two fingers it depends on how big your fingers are and what they do in order to do that. And that leaves your ring finger to do the control. As I said, I didn't have much control over it. It didn't behave. But what I found is with practice, I could make it behave. So I started practicing with that finger. And over a period of time, I was able to get that finger to start moving, pretty well. I could make it do what it wanted to do. When I first was doing it, it would barely move. So that was the start of being able to use this hold to do the Wallis cast. Now, the other thing I did is since I've got a 13-foot 4-section rod, is I've just using the bottom section of the rod. I put a rubber band around the line so that I don't have any free line. Everything's contained here. And what I've created is about a 3-foot fidget spinner. And this is my practice setup. And what this allowed me to do is to practice the action of this finger. And then I could start spinning and stopping, spinning and stopping. So that started getting that motion. Then I could add where I was actually using these fingers to spin the reel, like I was pulling the line off the bottom. And then I could add bringing the line back. And eventually I could add the swing and the line. And doing all those steps allowed me to teach myself the timing and get that to be just second nature in terms of the Wallis cast. Now, a couple other things I found is I was not achieving some very good distance initially when I was first learning, and what I was doing is I kept cranking harder. What I didn't realize, and when you look at the videos, you won't see people really swinging the rod hard. With a 13-foot rod, you've got some really high tip velocities. I was a spin fisherman for many decades, so a 6.5-foot rod, with the same speed, a 13-foot rod is twice that speed because it's just twice as long. So you don't really have to crank very hard to get big distances. And if you don't believe that, take a 1/4 ounce weighted float or something, or a real cheap float, and add some weight under it. Not a lot. Add about 18 feet of line to it, just cheap monofilament. String it back through your rod, your whole rod setup. Hold it like a spin fisherman, hold the line, and cast it and let go. You'll be amazed at how far you can cast. So in one respect, that's how far you could cast that 1/4 ounce, float. And, in a smaller stream, I'm using maybe a 4.5 gram float. And with all the weight and stuff under it, it ends up being about 7 grams, or about a 1/4 of an ounce of weight. So that imitates what you're typically doing with a smaller float in a smaller stream. So, you don't have to cast hard. What you do have to do is you have to get the reel spinning so that when that float is leaving the tip of your rod at fairly good speed, that the line is coming off your reel at somewhat close or somewhat approaching that same speed. And, when you're swinging, you've got pretty high velocity up there, but you've got 13-foot of rod. So even on a 90-degree angle, you're moving the tip of that rod 20 feet. Whereas here, you're only pulling, 3.5 feet. 3 feet, 2.5 to 3 feet, to get this reel. So to get distance, you don't have to swing hard, but what you have to do is you have to get the reel spinning faster. So, those things will help you achieve distance and work on the Wallis Cast. I would not recommend really trying to crank on the speed of the reel as you're learning. That's somewhat detrimental. It'll cause you more problems with timing and everything. Work into that. The other thing I did is I used a little wood practice float that I've had since I was a teenager. Happens to be just about a little less than a half an ounce of weight. I would not go much heavier than this, because if you go much heavier than this, you end up having enough mass to be able to get the reel spinning just from the weight being accelerated off the tip of your rod. So keep it a little bit lighter, but you don't have to be all the way down at a 1/4 ounce to start teaching yourself. The other thing that's important is having about 4 feet of line from the tip of your rod to the top of your float, because when you give a pull here, some of the line or some of the pull is pulling that float back toward the tip. And if for some reason you have a problem where you've wrapped the line around your clicker or around your reel seat, or you've left your clicker on and you give a pull, you're pulling that float right up and smashing it into the tip of your rod, and that's not what you want to do. So make sure you've got about 4 feet of line from the tip to the top of your float, so that when you do your cast and do your pull, you're not going to hurt your rod. So I spent several days doing this, practicing this, walking around the house doing it, watching TV, doing this motion. And what was absolutely amazing to me is after those days of practice, I went out, put everything back together, put the practice float on, and I was achieving right out of the gate about 9 out of 10 good floats. Casts, which is, I think, phenomenal. And I think what happened here is, in the past, I was spending all my time trying to worry about, I got to release, I've got to stop, I got to do this, I've got to, I was thinking about everything. But when you've practiced and practiced and practiced, it all becomes muscle memory. And when you go to do it, everything is just natural, and you're not thinking about it, and it just happens. And so this little sort of exercise really helped me learn the Wallis Cast. And as you've noticed, I haven't even done a demonstration of the Wallis Cast. Quite frankly, I'm not an expert or anywhere near it yet. I'm getting better. I can cast without having bird's nest or having problems. I'm working on my distance, I'm working on my accuracy, but I can get out and I can use Wallis Cast and I can fish and do the drifts and do all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully this type of a method of training will help someone other than myself learn to do the Wallis Cast. Thanks for watching.